yeah, I hope you enjoyed connecting in the different rooms. I know I had a good time bouncing around, meeting a few people that I've, new people I haven't met yet. And all thanks to this virtual space, I'm able to connect with you all. So I'm super excited for this next workshop. We have the fabulous Leah Bonvissuto, who's a communications coach and founder at Present Voices, and she's going to be leading what we hope is an interactive workshop on confident communications being heard in the virtual world. Very excited to hear what she has to say about this. With Present Voices, she's been helping so many leaders learn to speak more confidently when it matters most. And she does this through communication coaching and through community like this. She is passionate about dismantling the systems that are silencing voices in our society. And she combines evidence-based tools and real work experience to address conversational communication, presentation skills, presence, confidence, and leadership style. I'm so excited to be a part of your presentation, Leah. It is not easy. As someone who is emceeing this event and has done so in person, I'm very, very excited to hear what you have to say of how do we transition those skills into a virtual space and do it confidently and with power and presence. So I'll let you take it away. And everyone, please, feel free to drop any questions you have during the workshop in the Slido, and we'll include that in the chat.
Thank you, Carolina. Thank you, everyone. Hello, everyone. And I want to begin by thanking the organizers of this event, Anna, Ava, Carolina, all of the Google developers and women tech makers. And I'm going to share my screen now. All right. So everyone, I know that we are only seeing faces right now of the organizers, of the co-hosts. And so if that is something that can be changed, that's awesome. It would be great to have more faces. If not, we will do it presentational mode, everyone. And so as we begin, today we're going to talk about confident communication and being heard in the virtual world. And it is my goal today to leave you all with very practical tools that you can put into practice tomorrow. And tomorrow is Saturday, so maybe you won't put them into practice tomorrow. Maybe you'll take a day off for the weekend. But my goal is for these to be super practical and actionable tools that will make sense in our virtual world. And when we're thinking about our virtual world, we're really thinking about how to make this space more confident, safer, and more inclusive. And I want to speak to what happened during Ela's wonderful presentation, but there was a Zoom bomb happening that some of you probably noticed in the chat, and that can create so much fear, and it is so scary. And so I have to create some space for what happened to put my heart out to Ela for having to deal with that. Hopefully she didn't see it. It was momentary, but these are the sorts of things that are happening in our virtual spaces. There are aggressions that have been happening in our very real spaces for so many people. And we're going to talk today about how to make this mode more safe, more inclusive, more confident, and more clear. And so as we do, we're reemerging right now, right? A year ago, we did this event. It was supposed to be in person. It was turned into virtual, and we were just thrown into this new life. And now we're a year later, we're starting to reemerge from it. But still, I think we can all agree that virtual spaces are truly here to stay. They're not going anywhere. And so as we enter year 2 of our not so new virtual reality, how can we be more present, more powerful, and more on purpose in these spaces? Virtual spaces are personal spaces. And this is something that I have been talking about for a year because it's just so important. As we just witnessed less than an hour ago, these spaces can be invaded, they can be not safe. And then at work, this can happen as well. And so it's really important to prioritize these 4 pillars of communication when it comes to virtual spaces: consent, clarity, inclusion, and confidence, right? And everyone, you see I have some sunshine coming in here. Give me a moment. These are the things that we're managing in our virtual spaces, right? Changes in our spaces, in our sunshine. Literally, as we're going, we're having to make adjustments. And so how can we make sure that this space feels good for us, that we feel safe here? When I talk about clarity, what I'm talking about is everyone is muted right now, right? That's something that we all know. Can everyone see and hear me okay? Is my technical connection all right? Can you give me a nod? Yeah. If that changes, can you go like this? Raise your hand if you've been in a virtual meeting in the last year where someone's technical difficulties crept on and no one told them, and they might have not known. So this is really happening in our spaces. And the more that we can have clarity, the more that people will be heard. I have a link here that I can't drop in the chat, but we're going to send it to you later, which is a sign up link for the slides from what I'm going to talk about today, and also a list of resources. So I'm going to share that with the organizers in a bit. They'll share it with you. And if you'd like to get a copy of the slides from today, fill out that form and you will receive them. It will also sign you up for my list. I email out about once a week. So that's what I'm talking about with clarity. With consent, we are recording today, but if anyone wants to share something, speak up, have their voices heard, and you want us to turn off the recording for a moment, just reach out to us and we can do that. We can pause it. That's something that I want to see more in our spaces, are people asking for consent and when recording, as the organizers did today, which is so wonderful. But how can we all feel more agency when things are being recorded, when screenshots are being taken? And so also thinking about inclusion for how to interact. Right now, not everyone is able to interact here because we're in more of a presentational format, but everyone can use nonverbal feedback. That's available at the bottom of Zoom or also in the participants window. You can actually tell me if I'm going too quickly. You can ask me to slow down. You can give a thumbs up. All of those nonverbal feedback cues is a great way for this to be as inclusive as possible. Tell me if I'm going too quickly. And also, a good way for inclusion is to put your pronouns in your name on Zoom or any other video conference software that you're using. Normally, I would invite everyone to have their videos on, but organizers, I don't think that people can put their videos on today because I'm not sure what the settings are, but just so everyone knows that that might be a concern. And confidence. So Ella did this so well. Ella said, I have a toddler outside. You might hear her. She's well taken care of. She said it with confidence. And I'm a big believer that we should say these things with confidence and not with apologies. So I could say, I also have a toddler out there. You might hear her. Or you could say during a meeting, I might be getting a delivery soon and it might interrupt me. You don't have to apologize when you say things like this. So this is what we're here to talk about, is this virtual world and how we can make it safer and more inclusive for all types of voices. And as we move there, I want to tell you a little bit more about myself. My name is Leah Bonvissuto, and I am a communication coach and founder of Present Voices. And I help people speak with more power and presence on video. I was a theater director for many years, and I felt very confident leading my teams. But the moment I had to talk about myself, it was like my personality shut down, my nerves came on, and my mind went blank. Not only were the nerves debilitating, but almost more so the shame around the nerves were so massive. I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody about it or admit it. And over the last 10 years, I've developed a process of tangible tools that have helped thousands of people in industries from tech to healthcare to media feel more confident and in control of their off-the-cuff communication. Today, I work with individuals and teams to help them speak off the cuff and communicate with more confidence. I have a ton of spatial and vocal privilege, and it's really important to talk about that. It's a big part of what we're going to talk about. And as a white person, that is something that I have to use in order to create space for voices. But it is my mission to dismantle systems that are oppressing voices so that more types of voices can be heard. We're going to talk about that a lot in our panel shortly, and we're going to talk about that here. Now, everyone, I take a good amount of data. A lot of my clients are data leaders. I'm massively inspired by them. And I collect data because it makes this soft skills work that much more tangible. And sadly, my data is showing that everyone is suffering. Truly, almost everyone. The numbers were this high pre-pandemic. 86.7% of people are experiencing debilitating nerves when they're speaking at work. 96.1% of people right now are experiencing anxiety at work. 85.9% of people do not feel prepared for spontaneous speaking. And I'm going to sit here. I wanted to see hands here, but for those of you who can't raise hands, I want you to even do it while we can't see you. Raise your hand if you experience nerves when you're trying to articulate yourself off the cuff. Raise your hand if you have palpitations that happen for seemingly no reason, that shake your entire solar plexus and make it hard to speak. Oh, the hands are raising. Raise your hands if your throat constricts or you feel like you can't catch your breath sometimes. Raise your hand if you have racing thoughts, if you feel like you don't belong sometimes at work, if you feel like you're not being heard. Yeah. And so everyone, there are so many hands being raised in this group that so many of us are experiencing this. So many of your teammates are experiencing this. And in fact, your managers and your superiors. And how can we create more safety in our spaces? How can we do this for everyone and each other? We're going to move now into thinking about how we can preserve our energy on Zoom, because I know everyone here, regardless of whether you're an essential worker working on the front lines or you are on Zoom all day, everyone knows how emotionally draining this past year has been. And so when we're on video calls, and those of us who are on video calls all day, we have to preserve our energy, because this mode of communication is a microscope for our presence. It's exhausting. And the reason why is because 93% of communication is nonverbal, is everything but the words. That's 93%. And when we are in these virtual spaces, we are losing a lot of that 93%. That 93% is made up of facial expression, tone of voice, body language, eye contact. Technical difficulties can make most of those things go away, right? Or just what I'm choosing to show on the screen can obscure those nonverbal feedback cues. And so those of us who are speaking or receiving, we are doing a lot of emotional work to fill that gap that's created in the virtual world, right? We're nodding a lot, we're leaning in, we're making ourselves small, we're trying to get a word in, right? Is everyone feeling the amount of effort that we're putting in these video calls? Even when we're not speaking, we're just moving so much. And this is all diminishing our hormonal confidence. And this is because of the studies done by Amy Cuddy and John Neffinger and Matthew Kohut around embodied cognition, and the idea that if we take up more space, we actually feel more confident. And so trying to get a word in, or making ourselves small, leaning in all the way so that we can interject and get a word in, is actually damaging our hormonal confidence. And instead, we need to practice taking up space. So on video, I prioritize 3 S words. They all start with S. They're really easy to remember. Silence, spaciousness, and stillness. All of these are very counterintuitive. Our mind tells us to do the opposite. Remember, it tells us to make ourselves small and speak really quickly so that we can really not be interrupted before we get everything in what we need to say. That is then signaling to ourselves that we have a reason to feel threatened. And we're going to talk about that quite a bit coming up, because that is very much a realism for too many people in our American workplace. But if you can prioritize your comfort first and foremost, you are going to signal to your own body that you are safe, safer, and that can start a healthy feedback loop between the mind and body connection to set you up for more confidence. And so everyone, wherever you are right now, can you prioritize feeling comfortable in your chair? Can you lean back? Maybe leaning back makes you feel further away from the screen. I'm going to challenge you to think of that as a good thing. But you can always scoot your chair in if you want, and I even have a pillow back here to prop me up. When you're leaning back, you can do what I call the pull. And this is so cool. Instead of me feeling like I have to push everything into the screen, I think of it as pulling my audience to me. All of this is going to help your ability to exert less and preserve your energy on Zoom. Now, you will naturally go right back to your habitual behavior always. This work always works that way. But then when you realize it, you can reset to comfort. We're going to talk a bit about in the panel how I really believe that you can't communicate with confidence unless you feel physically comfortable. And if you envision the speakers, the leaders you know who exhibit the most comfort and confidence, they're usually sitting in a really comfortable way. So prioritize your own comfort. You can also hear how I'm modulating my vocal volume a little bit. I'm actually pulling my vocal volume back to about 75%. This is enabling that I'm not pushing my vocal volume too much. Zoom and other video conference platforms do a good amount to pick up speaker volume and to minimize background noise. And so you can pull your volume back to about 75%. And just by doing that, it creates this pull effect where I'm bringing people to me. For the faces I can see, can you hear me okay? Is my volume all right? Yeah. And so we don't want to push too much. It is what's creating so much emotional drainage. Now, this has a few caveats. First of all, I only put this practice into place, what I'm talking about, these tools, into practice in my most important meetings. Because presence is so exhausting, you really want to reserve this for the moments that are important. You cannot do this if you're in video meetings all day. Choose 1 or 2 meetings a day that really require your presence and attention and focus there. And this is also going to vary greatly, of course, based on the power and privilege in a space. What I'm speaking about, which is really about how we can put in less effort into our video communication, is for people who feel like they don't have enough power and privilege at work in your spaces. For the leaders in our space who are holding more power and privilege, it is your responsibility actually to put in more effort, to put in the effort to encourage your team to speak, to bring them out and to ask what they need their virtual spaces to be like in order for them to feel heard and safe. So everyone, we're going to practice this all together. Everyone's on mute, and that is the way it will be. But we're going to practice because we're all on mute and we can speak without being heard. So everyone, I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself on mute. No one's going to hear you. We're all going to say, hi, my name is, my role is. And I'm going to ask you to practice saying this from a place of comfort, leaning back. You might also feel your contact points where your body hits the chair just melt, to melt where your body hits the chair into the floor. Another idea, you might feel your foot on the floor and feel your foot sink into the floor. How can you prioritize your own comfort? And within that, to pull your vocal volume back to about 75%, to think of pulling your audience to you. And so we're going to practice this by saying, my name is, my role is, introducing yourself on mute. All right, everyone, let's do it in 3, 2, 1. Hi, my name is Leah Bonvissuto. I'm a communication coach and founder of Present Voices. Don't stop yourself if you're still speaking. Fantastic. So everyone, practicing this is essential because it doesn't necessarily feel natural. It's something I always tell my clients, that this isn't natural. If it was natural, we wouldn't be working on it. We're working on it because this is rooted in our own habitual behavior, and we are moving to expand the range of our own habitual behavior. And so practicing it is important in order to make it feel more natural, but it won't be natural at first. The big thing to pay attention to is that you want it to feel comfortable. As I said, you have to prioritize your own comfort. And so now we're going to move into a big topic that I know is important for so many of you. This is the biggest question I hear from my clients right now. And this is, how can I be heard without interrupting on Zoom? In our video meetings, I know you all know far more than me, we are speaking over each other. There is so much cacophony of sound happening. People are leaning in, they're interrupting, they're not creating any air. And this is only serving very particular types of voices. The thing I want to say about the types of voices who are perpetuating this, who are probably some of the people in charge, is that they could be doing a better job of communicating. They could be doing a better job of creating space. It's what I was talking about up above, that it really falls on the responsibility of leadership to find ways to make sure that everyone's voices are heard. That being said, my clients who are leaders, they speak fast and they keep speaking through silence, not because they intend to interrupt, but because they want to carry the conversational responsibility. They feel responsible. And this is good intentions. And so how can you tell if your environment is because of good intentions or bad intentions? We can't truly, unless we're having those deeper conversations. That's something I recommend. Have these deeper conversations with your team. Make a plan for how to let people know when there's technical difficulties, how to manage people's ability to feel heard, and how to have a commonality in the language. I run these corporate team workshops for groups all over the country and all over the world. They're incredibly, incredibly impactful for that point. But the bigger point is that our communication is contagious. So if everyone's speaking over each other and trying to get a word in, such it will be. And so we have to create spaces that are much more measured in their pace and that are serving everyone's voices. First of all, if you feel the need to interrupt, just remember that you will not be served by interrupting and trying to fit what you want to say into a tiny bit of a hair and rushing to do so. So what I recommend doing is, what I just did was I took the conversation. You want to wait for the hair of a pause, and you want to take the conversation with filler, intentional filler. Once you have the conversation, you can look away to signal that you're thinking, to have a reset button, to ground yourself again. And then you don't even have to continue the same thought when you begin speaking again. But you are taking the conversation in order to reset the pace and pull people towards you. Once you're speaking, and this is totally counterintuitive, how can you not rush? It is absolutely in our impulse to rush when the pace of the conversation is fast. But then we are signaling to ourselves that we should go faster and that what we have to say is less important. And so do not let them rush you. Some techniques around that are to use the breath to really honor your innate rhythm. And so what I just did, as you can see, I took a pause at the change of a thought in order to reground myself in breath and to create a different pace. You could also do what I'm doing right now, which is saying every word that's coming out of my mouth. It's really, really awkward for me, but no one can tell that. And so that will naturally create a slowing down of the overall pace. Oh, and one of my favorites for all of you who speak in acronyms all day, and I know on your teams, acronyms are just the shorthand to get things done more quickly. If there's certain acronyms that you say every day, can you actually say each letter when you say that acronym? So A, B, C, and that will serve as a speed bump to slow down your overall ability of rate of speech. Finally, my last tip about getting a word in is, on your feet, can you restructure your ideas so that the biggest idea is at the top? This is about starting at the conclusion. And this, another way of thinking about this is to articulate the headline of your response and starting there. Like with most things in communication, this is counterintuitive. We have been socialized and taught to tell stories from A to B to C, with a Z being the conclusion. We've been taught to build our case to get there. And I'm asking you to reverse this. To start with the big idea, with the headline, with the conclusion, and then back it up. But start there so that you are capturing everyone and speaking from a high level perspective. And finally, we're going to practice what we just spoke about, which is the breath. So much of our virtual world is taking us up and out of our bodies. And that's what being on our phones does to us. That's what being in video calls all day does to us. When I was a very amateur programmer and I would be coding websites all day, this was something I would experience so deeply. If I was sitting on the couch with my laptop for 8 hours, I would come out of it and feel like I haven't taken a breath all day. Our breath is our internal rhythm. It's our source. For the people who come to see me because they lose their train of thought or their mind goes blank or they have very intense physiological sensations, which about 85% of us do, this is almost always the key, almost always. And so we're going to practice it for a moment here of actually allowing our bodies to breathe, to sink down into breath. And this is 3D breath. We've probably heard of this as diaphragmatic breathing, but it's the idea of actually allowing your belly to expand as you inhale and to let your belly contract as you exhale. And so let's just practice this right now together. We can all use a little bit of this right now, especially at the end of a long work week. And so as you inhale, can you feel your belly button move away from your spine? And as you exhale, can you feel your belly button move towards your spine? And as in this GIF, you can make it go more slowly so that it's actually regulating your central nervous system and pulling back the overall pace that you feel that your system is going in. So everyone, as we begin to wrap up today, this is all a work in progress. And I'm a really big believer in the fact that our voices are perfect, that they are exactly as they should be, that environments can make that more challenging for us to honor our innate voices, but that we really all do come from a place of strength when we can truly honor our own voices and be ourselves. It's something we'll talk about a lot in the panel that's upcoming. I encourage you to visit my website, presentvoices.co. You can sign up for my newsletter there. I'm going to see if I can chat this link. No, I don't. I might be able to. Let's see. Yes, I can. So everyone, I'm going to put a link in the chat. And this is a link to sign up for my list. This is a special link. So if you sign up at this link, you're going to get an automatic load for the slides and the resources that go with it. It will automatically direct you to that page on my website. All right. Also, I want everyone to know to follow me on Instagram if you'd like, and to get in touch. I offer free consultations for my private coaching. I'm also launching my group coaching program in the next few weeks. I only do that a few times a year. So if you're interested, head to presentvoices.co and let me know. And if we have time for questions, I'll leave that up to the moderators. I would love to answer any that have been submitted. Thank you all so much.
Thank you, Leah. That was great. Definitely, I'm now sitting back, enjoying my comfort and trying to channel that into speaking more clearly, right? More confidently. So thank you so much for sharing all those incredible gems. I was taking notes and I hope everyone was as well. We have a few questions here. So yeah, people, acknowledging the Zoom bombing. Thank you so much actually for acknowledging that, right? It's a very real and it was a very practical, tangible thing that we all experienced. And I know us on the back end, we were freaking out. So thank you for just making us more mindful and aware of just the different things that go into recognizing how to communicate in a virtual space. So questions are, as a person who interrupts unintentionally with ADHD, other than interrupting myself when I realize and apologizing, how can I make sure others don't get frustrated? Great question.
Yeah, absolutely. So those of us who feel the need to interject, I do too. For me, it's totally rooted in what I call conversational responsibility. I don't want to put the onus on someone else. And it really is so rooted in good intentions for most people, for 99.9% of people. And so what I have to do in those moments, first of all, is recognize that it is an innate behavior that I'm trying to change and to be graceful with myself as the habit continues to need to be worked on. And then once you're there, for you to bring your attention to the breath. And I do this, I call it ocean breath. It's not me, it's a yogic breathing technique. It's millennia years old. And it goes like this. I can hear it, other people can't. I'm doing it very loud just for all of your benefit. But I do that as my listening mechanism. By listening to the sound of my own breath, I'm actually listening to everything that's happening around me. And it gives me something proactive to do that prevents me from jumping right in and cutting someone off. And then if you do cut someone off, just communicate about it. That's a great opportunity to intentionally apologize. I'm all about intentional apologizing and not unconsciously apologizing, but certainly that's a good opportunity to communicate about it and to talk about talking and making sure that the space feels safe.
Great, thank you. So another question, how do newbies in tech get their voices heard without feeling out of place? When can we feel eligible to be heard? Is there a time span that we should be aware of?
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
My hope, and we're going to talk about this deeply in the panel, is that we're going to be working for organizations that want to hear from our voices at the individual contributor level, all the way up through all levels of management. And for us to look for organizations that are supporting that from day one. And so I support startups that are 3 people strong right now, and everyone is getting coaching and everyone is having a voice. And so I believe this should start on day one. And if it is not being nurtured, that is something to question. We are in a world now where we need to hear from voices, and we need leadership that is not threatened and that is collaborative. That's what our panel is all about. And so I know that that is wishful thinking, and many people are unfortunately in organizations that are not quite there yet. And so look for people you can trust. This is something that is talked about very much in lots of different studies about cultural environments and what feels safe and what doesn't. And so people finding safety within those spaces is key. And then from there, advocating and articulating yourself. And anything that makes you doubt the confidence of your own voice is a red flag and something that needs to be talked about and questioned.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, looking forward to that panel on collaborative leadership. So next question is, I stutter and I know it's something that's deeply rooted. I usually become extremely aware of myself while talking to anyone. How can I overcome this? Thank you.
Yeah, the stutter is a very real thing rooted in a lot of trauma. And I'm seeing it with my 3-year-old right now, the way that she's criticized as she begins to learn language. And this is something that can be deeply, deeply damaging. The stutter is something that we can, deal with in speech pathology, and that in itself can sometimes be damaging in different ways. But the undercurrent that's really, I think, the most damaging is the anxiety. And so if I had a stutter as a kid, but then the anxiety is the voices in my head when I go to speak or I'm put on the spotlight that say, you're going to stutter, you're not going to be able to get your words out, you're going to not be able to articulate. The anxiety is what we have to deal with, not the stutter. We have to deal with the ability to reground and get present into our bodies in order to listen to ourselves and what we want to say. There are technical tools to deal with the stutter. The anxiety is priority number 1.
Yeah. So one final question due to time, and then we'll jump into breakout sessions where we could continue, having these conversations. So last question, how do you manage when you are trying to have a conversation with someone who will go on and off talking, not giving you time to participate in the conversation?
Yeah, like I said, this is often due to their own insecurity, almost always. And so just by seeing that, especially if there's a power dynamic at play, that can be an interesting way to reframe the situation. But you absolutely want to look for those pockets of air where you actually interject your voice. And so just like that, even if they then continue on, for you to actually interject your voice and get your voice in the space. In some virtual settings, that might mean chatting. It might mean using nonverbal feedback. But in any space where we want to hear your voice and your voice is not being heard, this is something that really needs to be worked on. And for those of you at other levels of leadership in those spaces where you're seeing those people not being able to be heard, this is where your responsibility comes in. And so how can we create spaces where everyone is heard?
Thank you so much, Leah.
Yeah.
That was great. Thank you so much. And
Thank
really
you, everyone.
Yeah, everyone, please stick around. Leah is going to be joining us for our panel after a short break. That panel is on collaborative leadership, how to lead with our most authentic selves. So we're going to jump to a quick break right now, and then we'll rejoin in about 10 or so minutes. Thank you, Leah. Virtual claps.